My son and I are starting a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you two divorce, you won't be able to make ends meet. If you want our address, get on your knees and lick my shoes." "What? What are you talking about? What do you mean?" I had no clue what my mother-in-law was talking about. I never sensed that they were planning to go abroad or that they had been saving up money. "That's because," I said, "my son got $3 million. We're going to live the high life overseas, just the two of us." "Why would my husband go abroad, and what's this about $3 million? Why do you want to know so badly?" "Well, if you really want to know, kneel down and beg, licking my shoes, and maybe I'll tell you." "What's with that attitude? Where is my husband?" "Oh, it's very comfortable here. We're enjoying the high life with my son's $3 million, so you're no longer needed." I was stunned by her words. What on earth does it mean that my husband suddenly got $3 million and is living a luxurious life abroad? The way she spoke about it made me feel like an outsider. I was filled with anger and anxiety, but I needed to stay calm and figure this out. How did my husband get such a huge sum of money, and is that $3 million possibly related to? I work as a manager at a major company. I met my husband in the same department and was drawn to his positive and cheerful nature, which led to our marriage. In the early years of our marriage, his parents warmly welcomed me. Later on, we had a daughter who is now 14. I grew up in poverty, and my parents were toxic. Having faced so many hardships, I was determined to cherish and love my daughter deeply while juggling work and household chores. However, one day, my husband was assigned to a project in Texas and had to move there alone. "It'll be tough living alone with our daughter," I said. "Yeah, taking care of work, household chores, and our daughter will be hard. Let's ask my mom to come over and help out. That might be a relief," he replied. So I reluctantly agreed to live with my mother-in-law. "Mommy, when will Daddy come back?" my daughter asked. "It seems he'll be in Texas for a while, but don't worry, Grandma's coming over." And so my mother-in-law moved in with us. I had no idea that this decision would be the biggest regret of my life. "You're working late again today, huh? Women who neglect their families." I'd come home from work to biting remarks from her. "I have a job too, and I take care of our daughter," I'd retort, but she was never satisfied. When I was young, the family was everything. The thought of working outside never crossed my mind. Then on the day my daughter got good grades at school, she said, "It's all thanks to me." What's the point of you? Maybe we don't need you around. Despite my mother-in-law helping only with simple homework tasks, I'd been the one teaching my daughter most subjects. When I slightly messed up a dish, she'd pounce. "How did you and my son even survive before with such poor cooking skills?" "I'm doing my best, and everyone has their own way of doing things," I'd snap back. My patience was wearing thin. "She doesn't do her chores," she complained to my husband. "Mom, she's working too. Please try to understand," my husband would chime in. However, living together, the relationship between my mother-in-law and me became increasingly strained. With my husband far away, I felt more isolated. One day I decided to call my husband to discuss this. "Hello, you okay right now?" "Yeah, I'm good." "What's up? It's kind of late." "Well, your mom gave me a piece of her mind about house chores and it's really getting to me." "I'm sorry." Mom's always been a bit sharp-tongued, but maybe she has a point. Still, don't let it get to you too much. Just keep doing things at your own pace. Feeling a bit reassured by my husband's words, I once again dedicated myself to our daily routine. But as my husband was away, the pressure from my mother-in-law kept building, and I was getting more and more worn out every day. I looked forward to my husband's return. Living with my mother-in-law without my husband around was challenging. Initially, I got by holding on to the remnants of my husband's presence, but as days turned into weeks, her behavior grew even more unbearable, and I felt crushed under the weight. She'd nitpick everything I did from dawn till dusk and criticize me constantly. When I made my husband's favorite rice dish, she coldly remarked, "This tastes terrible. Who'd eat this?" Whenever I took a short break, she chastised me with, How can a woman who can't even handle household chores take a break? I never had much confidence in housework. With my husband, he'd just laugh off my little mistakes. In front of my mother-in-law, I realized I had no room for error. I think the way she treats me stems from her excessive love for her son. She seems unable to accept that he got married and moved away from her. This experience made me firmly resolve never to become an overbearing parent like her. One day, after treating myself to a small shopping spree at a local mall, my mother-in-law got wind of it. When I got home, she was waiting for me at the entrance, fuming. "How could you think of going out for fun when your husband isn't home? What do you think is happening with the household chores?" I thought I needed a little break. A break in this situation. All this trouble is happening because of your ineptitude. After that, I awaited a call from my husband. I believed that hearing his voice might lighten my mood, but the content of his call was far from what I expected. "I've got some bad news. My work in Texas isn't going well. I got into gambling and now I'm in a tight spot financially. I've also accumulated quite a debt." "What? Are you kidding me? Gambling and debt? This is way out of line. What's going to happen to our future and our daughters?" "I'm sorry, really sorry. I feel stuck right now, but trust me, I'll find a way." How do you plan to handle this? How much do you owe?" "I'm working on a solution. I always thought of my husband as a sincere person who would never gamble. He was always punctual for our dates, and after we moved in together, he always came straight home from work. He would always thank me whenever I cooked or did laundry. It's because he was so sincere and honest that I married him. But with him away and the constant criticism from my mother-in-law, my life felt unbearable. I can't believe someone as useless as you married my son." My heart was sinking into despair. Since my husband started working away from home, I've been constantly criticized and blamed by my mother-in-law, and my husband's recent confession deepened the despair I felt inside. His debts, the gambling issues, followed by an onslaught of more criticism from my mother-in-law. I couldn't handle it anymore, and one night, I left the house and found myself crying on a park bench. Then one day my mother-in-law discovered a secret from my past. At dinner, she used it as ammunition against me. "So I heard you used to work in a nightclub, huh? Shame on you for raising my grandchild after working in such a place. How did you find out about that?" I was telling an acquaintance about how useless my son's wife is and showed them a picture of you. They recognized you. Apparently, you weren't even good at that nightclub job. In my past, frustrated with a mother who never worked and always partied, I left my family home. Struggling for money, I found work at a nightclub. It was a time from before I married my husband, a secret I believed even he didn't know. I was at a loss for words. I had never imagined my mother-in-law would discover this about my past, and she continued to use this secret to berate me further. "I can't believe someone like you is the mother of my grandchild. I'll tell my son and have you kicked out." The depth of my despair grew even deeper. My married life with my husband, all the efforts I've made, and the future I had envisioned, it felt as if everything was taken away with her words. The communication from my husband dwindled. I feared he had started to doubt and suspect me. One night, alone in my room, I reflected on my life, meeting my husband, our marriage, our current circumstances, and the constant blame and accusations from my mother-in-law. I felt I couldn't go on like this. "I can't take it anymore." Whispering these words, I walked out into the lonely nighttime streets. The quiet streets echoed the hopelessness I felt inside. My mother-in-law's words resonated in my head. My past, my secrets, and my present, everything became a target for her criticism and blame. I sat on a bench in a park, staring up at the sky. Not a single star was visible. My heart felt just as dark. Suddenly, someone approached. "Mom, why are you here?" My daughter sat next to me, holding my hand. "Mom, don't let Grandma get to you. You work hard at a knit company and you've been through so much. You're strong." "Thank you, but maybe Grandma has a point." "Mom, Grandma's just stuck in the past. In today's world, you should be proud of any job you've done." "I'm proud you worked at a nightclub." "Really? Yes, because it shows you've always tried your best for us, no matter the circumstances. Don't let Grandma's words control you. Hearing my daughter's words warmed my heart, and I couldn't hold back my tears. Mom, you're working hard in it now, right? That's amazing. I'll always be on your side, no matter what Grandma says. Gratitude for my daughter filled my heart. Her support gave me hope that together we could overcome any challenges. Later in my husband's study, I took a deep breath before delving into a mountain of paperwork. I meticulously checked each document, trying to uncover his secrets: bank statements, credit card bills, loan agreements. Slowly, my husband's financial situation became clearer. Why did this happen? I found several receipts from gambling activities: horse racing, slot machines, casinos. Thinking about how much money he had squandered on these activities was heart-wrenching. Next, I turned on my husband's PC. The password was his birthday but reversed. His mailbox was flooded with collection emails from financial institutions and messages from friends demanding repayment of loans. Furthermore, I found a plethora of promotional emails from gambling-related sites. I decided to calculate how much my husband had spent on gambling. The result was an astounding $3 million, far beyond my estimation. Seeing that amount, I temporarily panicked, but there's no time to lose. I began to plan on securing funds to maintain our livelihood. I considered my savings, the expected amount from selling our high-end electronics and luxury goods at home, and the savings from my salary. After that, I continued my own investigation. I strived daily, reaching out to financial institutions to grasp the details of how much my husband owed and where. By obtaining credit information in his name, a few days later, I came up with a plan. I began preparations to build a life without relying on my husband or mother-in-law, while also figuring out a strategy to repay my husband's debts. Capitalizing on my experience in the industry, I decided to join freelance projects. For several days, I created a portfolio and registered on a website introducing freelance jobs. Then, a few days later, I received my first request from a client. This will help a bit with our living expenses. In between daily work, I reviewed our household finances. I canceled unnecessary subscription services, cut down on wasteful spending, and researched recipes for savings. I successfully reduced our daily food expenses as much as possible. Moreover, based on information from local mom friends, I tried participating in a community yard sale. I managed to sell some brand items and unnecessary electronics we had, earning a decent amount. A few weeks later, my activities as a freelancer were going smoothly, and I felt that my income was becoming stable. By then, my bank account had a firm amount necessary for living expenses. When I came home, all of my mother-in-law's belongings were gone. Simultaneously, my phone rang. The caller was my mother-in-law. "Oh, are you already home? Noticed our stuff is gone?" "What are you trying to say?" "My son and I are starting a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you two divorce, you won't be able to make ends meet. If you want our address, get on your knees and lick my shoes." I couldn't help but chuckle. Actually, that $3 million is a debt. Stop joking. There's no way my son has that kind of debt. You might not believe it, but it's true. In his study, there's transaction records from banks and financial institutions, credit card bills, contracts, and more. Plus, on his PC, there are collection emails from financial institutions, messages from friends demanding repayment, and promotional emails from gambling sites. If you don't believe me, why don't you check? You're lying. It's the result of him getting deeply into gambling, horse racing, slot machines, casinos. All in all, it amounts to a whopping $3 million. I just sent you photos of the evidence. Maybe you should take a look. I had no idea. He probably didn't want you to know, but it doesn't change the facts. I've been pondering how to deal with this massive debt, but I guess I don't have to anymore. My mother-in-law took a deep breath in silence. I truly didn't know. I don't know what to say. Without saying another word, I hung up. I resolved to start a new life from this point on. I was shocked by the actions of my husband and mother-in-law, but moving forward, there's nothing to do but forge ahead for the future of my daughter and me. Later on, my husband called. I'm so sorry, truly I am. His voice was more subdued than I'd ever heard it, yet my anger didn't subside. Why did it come to this? Our family is falling apart because of you. I never thought it would come to this, but when I decided to go overseas with Mom, I couldn't see a future with you and our daughter. I was flabbergasted by his words. You couldn't see. It's because of your carelessness and lack of planning that our family is in this mess. I know that, but it's too late now. I made a promise to Mom. Promise? What promise? One to sacrifice our daughter's future and grab a paradise just for yourselves. My husband was silent for a while. Did you truly love our family? I did, but now it's different. At that point, his voice broke and I could hear him crying. Don't hurt us anymore. My daughter and I are going to live on our own from now on. We'll forget about you. He didn't say anything back. I could only hear his sobbing from the other end. Calmly, I hung up the phone. The reason my mother-in-law confused assets with debts was due to a bill of $3 million that suddenly arrived at our home. She mistook the $3 million bill for a lottery-winning notice. She began planning her dream relocation overseas and approached my husband about it. Unaware of his mother's misunderstanding and thinking starting a new life overseas would allow him to escape the debt problem, he accepted her proposal, mistaking a bill for a lottery notice. After that, I kept my anger towards my husband and began looking for a lawyer. I was set on preparing for a divorce, claiming compensation for emotional distress and child support. Now a new life was about to start, a life for me and my daughter, independent from my husband and mother-in-law. I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce, emotional distress compensation, and child support claims. During this period, my daughter and I spent a lot of quality time together, and she became my strongest supporter. She fully understood my decision and chose to stay with me. Hearing her words made all the hardships, disputes with my husband and mother-in-law worth it, and I couldn't help but shed tears. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and husband were struggling with their life overseas. They tried to start fresh, but faced constant problems due to poor preparation and financial troubles. Things got worse when they were pickpocketed and lost their money. The language barrier made everything harder. Eventually, they were deported for overstaying their visas. Later, I negotiated with my husband through a lawyer. We finalized the divorce, and he agreed to pay emotional distress compensation and child support in one lump sum. Thank you, now I can finally start a new life. But all at once. Wouldn't it be better in installments? He took on even more debt, borrowing from a shady loan shark. I don't know what happened to him after that, and honestly, I don't care. After being evicted and losing her savings, my mother-in-law ended up homeless when she returned to the U.S. My daughter and I started our new life. It wasn't always easy, but freed from my husband and mother-in-law, we could look to the future positively. I want to live happily, working together with my daughter, who saved me from the depths of despair.
I'm Anna Richardson, 28 years old, and up until recently, my life was a fairy tale. Or so I thought. The memory of my wedding day is still vivid in my mind. My family, although supportive, had reservations. Their biggest concern? Gregory Hartman, my husband, had been divorced once before, and his first marriage had barely lasted a year. Irreconcilable differences, they said. But I was in love, and love, I believed, could conquer all. My father's eyes were moist when he gave me away. "Be happy, Anna," he whispered, his voice laced with unspoken worries. "Gregory, she's in your hands now." Gregory had smiled, his confidence unwavering. "I won't let you down, sir," he had promised. But promises are like glass, easily shattered. This morning, like every morning since our wedding, I woke up to find Gregory's side of the bed cold and empty. I used to wake up earlier to prepare breakfast and see him off to work with a kiss. Now the kisses had stopped, and so had the warm goodbyes. "Gregory, breakfast is ready," I called out, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "Yeah," was all he grunted in response, not even glancing my way as he grabbed his coat and headed for the door. The difference was stark. Before marriage, Gregory was attentive, loving. Now he was like a stranger, a cold, distant figure occupying the same space, but sharing none of the warmth we once had. I tried to brush off the nagging feeling of unease. Maybe it's just the stress of his job, I told myself. But deep down, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. The turning point came today, in the most unexpected way. Gregory had left his phone on the kitchen table. Usually, I respected his privacy, but something compelled me to glance at the screen when it lit up with a new message. "Thanks for last night. Can't wait to see you again." The sender's name was Claire. A wave of nausea hit me as I stared at the message, the room spinning around me. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief coursing through me. This was it. The moment everything came crashing down. The man I loved, the man I had married, was not who I thought he was. I felt a bitter laugh escape my lips. All those times I had defended him, believed in him, and he was betraying me. My family's concerns, my friends' subtle warnings, everything made sense now. I knew what I had to do. The thought of divorce had crossed my mind before, but I had pushed it away, hoping things would get better. But not anymore. I couldn't live a lie. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, Gregory walked back in, having forgotten his phone. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, fear? It didn't matter. "Anna, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern that seemed so fake now. "Nothing," I replied, my voice steady, just thinking about how things change. He didn't press further, simply grabbing his phone and leaving. But in that moment, I made up my mind. I would confront him, and I would free myself from this sham of a marriage. Little did Gregory know, he had just pushed me to the edge, and I was ready to push back. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the computer screen. Work used to be a place of solace, a distraction from the growing troubles at home. But today it felt like a cage. My thoughts kept drifting back to Gregory, to that message from Claire, and to the love that once felt so real. It was here, in this very office, where I had first met Gregory Hartman. He was charming, confident, and his laughter was infectious. I remember how he would always find an excuse to pass by my desk, how our coffee breaks became frequent and longer. Back then, I was just Anna, an employee in my father's company, not the CEO's daughter. When Gregory found out about my family, I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but he quickly masked it with a smile. "You're full of surprises, Anna," he had said. That moment made me believe he loved me for me, not for my background. But now, as I reflected on our past, I couldn't help but wonder if I had been naive. The Gregory I knew before our marriage was caring, attentive, and always put me first. The Gregory I lived with now was a stranger. "Anna, you okay?" My colleague Sarah peered at me with concern. "Just a bit distracted," I replied, forcing a smile. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind was in turmoil. Gregory's change was gradual but undeniable. He started coming home late, often missing dinner. Our conversations dwindled to monosyllables. His once warm embrace turned cold, and his kisses disappeared. But the worst part was his indifference. The way he would shrug off my attempts at conversation, the way he ignored my presence, it was like living with a ghost. "Anna, you've been different since you got married," Sarah had once commented. I brushed it off, not wanting to admit that my marriage was crumbling. Today, my denial was shattered. The evidence was there on Gregory's phone. The late nights, the lack of interest, it all made sense. He was having an affair. As the day came to an end, I packed my things and headed home. The house felt empty, just like my heart. I needed answers, and I needed to confront Gregory. When he finally came home, I was ready. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Gregory looked surprised but nodded. "What's wrong?" "It's about us, Gregory. About our marriage," I began. "I know about Claire." For a moment, Gregory looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then he composed himself. "Anna, I can explain," he started, but I raised my hand to stop him. "I don't want your excuses, Gregory. I want the truth. Why did you marry me? Was it ever real, or was it all just a game to you?" Gregory sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Anna, it's complicated." "No, it's simple. You lied, you cheated," I countered, the hurt evident in my voice. "We talked, or rather, I talked and Gregory listened. He tried to explain, to justify his actions, but his words fell on deaf ears. The trust was broken, and with it, our marriage. That night, I made a decision. I would file for divorce. I couldn't stay in a loveless, deceitful marriage. I deserved better, and I was determined to get it. As I lay in bed alone in the darkness, I realized this was just the beginning. I had to brace myself for what was to come. But one thing was clear: I would not let Gregory Hartman ruin my life. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. It was a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled in my heart. Today was the day I had decided to confront Gregory about everything: his infidelity, his indifference, the sham our marriage had become. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would say it. I needed him to understand the depth of my hurt, the betrayal I felt. But more than that, I needed closure. I needed to know why. As the day dragged on, my resolve only grew stronger. When Gregory finally came home, I was ready. I had prepared dinner, not as an act of reconciliation, but as a setting for our final conversation as husband and wife. "Gregory, we need to talk," I said firmly as we sat down. He looked up, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "What now, Anna?" "It's about us. About our marriage," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know about your affair with Claire. I saw the messages." For a moment, Gregory was silent. Then he let out a heavy sigh. "Anna, it's not what you think." "Then what is it, Gregory? Enlighten me, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me since the day we got married." Gregory shifted uncomfortably. "It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I challenged, my voice rising slightly. Gregory looked at me, his expression hardening. "Fine. You want the truth? I was bored, Anna. Our marriage became a routine, and I needed something more. I felt as if I had been slapped." "So you decided to have an affair because you were bored?" "Yes, I guess I did," he admitted, his voice void of remorse. The pain in my chest was almost physical. "And what about our vows? What about everything we promised each other?" Gregory shrugged. "Things change, Anna. People change." I stared at him, my vision blurring with tears. This was not the man I married. This was someone else, someone cold and unrecognizable. "You know what, Gregory? I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who has so little regard for me, for our marriage. I want a divorce." Gregory's expression didn't change. "If that's what you want." It was said with such indifference it stung more than any argument could. I had hoped for some sign of the man I once loved, some indication that he cared. But there was nothing. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The reality of what had transpired sunk in. I was going to be alone, divorced at 28. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was also a sense of relief. I was finally freeing myself from a loveless marriage. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and legal consultations. I moved back into my old room at my parents' house, seeking comfort in the familiarity of my childhood home. My father was supportive, though I could see the worry in his eyes. "You'll get through this, Anna," he assured me. "You're stronger than you think." And deep down, I knew he was right. This was not the end of my story. It was just a new beginning. A beginning where I could find myself again, away from the shadows of a marriage that was never meant to be. As I signed the last of the divorce papers, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope for the future. The world outside seemed to carry on as usual, but for me, everything had changed. The finality of signing those divorce papers marked the end of a chapter in my life. A chapter filled with love turned sour, dreams turned to dust. In the weeks that followed, I found myself oscillating between relief and bouts of sadness. I had been so sure that Gregory was my forever, but now I was starting to rebuild my life without him. Despite the hurt, a part of me yearned for closure. I needed to understand why Gregory did what he did. Why he chose to betray our vows, our love. I needed answers, not for him, but for myself. Driven by this need, I decided to hire a private investigator. It was a drastic step, but the truth was worth it. The PI I hired was a seasoned professional, and within days, he had gathered enough evidence to paint a clear picture of Gregory's infidelity. The report was detailed, complete with timestamps and photographs. It showed Gregory and Claire, his co-worker, together at various locations, their body language unmistakably intimate. My heart ached as I looked at the images, but it also solidified my decision to leave him. Armed with this evidence, I confronted Gregory again. This time, there was no dinner, no pretense of civility. We met in a neutral location, a quiet park where the autumn leaves painted the ground in hues of orange and brown. "Gregory, look at these," I said, handing him the folder of evidence. He flipped through it, his face unreadable. When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. "What do you want, Anna?" "I want you to admit it," I said, my voice firm. "Admit that you cheated, that our marriage was a lie to you." Gregory sighed, closing the folder. "Yes, I cheated, but our marriage wasn't a lie, Anna. I just needed more." His confession, though expected, still hurt. "More? I gave you everything, Gregory. I loved you with all my heart. And I appreciated that," he said, almost too casually. "But sometimes love isn't enough." His words cut deep, but they also brought clarity. This was who Gregory was, a man for whom love was a convenience, not a commitment. "I hope one day you realize what you've lost," I said, standing up. "Goodbye, Gregory." As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and liberation. I had loved Gregory with all I had, but now I was ready to let go. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. In the days that followed, I dove into work, finding solace in the routine. My colleagues, sensing the change, offered support in their own ways. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang. It was the private investigator. "Miss Richardson, there's something you need to see," he said, his tone serious. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I agreed to meet him. What he showed me next was the last piece of the puzzle, the final blow to any lingering feelings I had for Gregory. It wasn't just about infidelity. Gregory had been planning to leave me long before our marriage crumbled. He had been manipulating me, using me, all along. The evidence was irrefutable, and it shattered any remaining illusions I had about him. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that this was truly the end. There would be no more tears for Gregory Hartman. He had made his choices, and now I was making mine. I chose to move forward, to heal, and to find happiness again. Gregory was a part of my past, but he would not define my future. The chill of the early morning air was a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. Today was the day I would confront Gregory and Claire together. I had arranged a meeting under the guise of finalizing our divorce proceedings, but my true intent was to expose the web of lies and deceit they had woven. As I walked into the cafe where we agreed to meet, I saw them sitting together, looking uncomfortably close. Gregory noticed me first, his eyes widening slightly. Claire, younger and seemingly oblivious to the gravity of the situation, gave me a disdainful look. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I think it's important we all understand the situation clearly." Gregory cleared his throat. "Anna, I've already agreed to the divorce terms. There's no need for further discussion." I smiled, a bitter, humorless smile. "It's not about the divorce, Gregory. It's about the truth." I turned to Claire. "Did he tell you that he was planning to leave me from the start? That our marriage was just a convenience for him?" Claire's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "What are you talking about? We're in love." "In love?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Is that what he told you? Because that's what he told me too." Gregory's face was a mask of frustration. "Anna, this isn't necessary." "Oh, but it is," I countered. "You see, I've learned a lot these past few weeks, about both of you." I laid out the evidence the private investigator had gathered, photos, messages, all painting a clear picture of their affair. But more than that, the evidence showed how calculated Gregory had been, how he had used me, used his position at my father's company to further his own agenda. Claire's face paled as she looked through the evidence. This isn't what you told me, Gregory." Gregory was silent, his usual eloquence gone. He had been exposed, and he knew it. "You see, Claire, Gregory is a master at manipulation," I said, my voice cold. "He doesn't love, he uses people. And once he's done, he discards them." Claire looked between me and Gregory, her expression one of dawning realization and horror. "And you, Gregory," I turned to him, "you've lost everything. Your wife, your lover, your position at the company. Was it worth it?" Gregory's gaze was unfocused, his usual composure shattered. I didn't think." "That's right. You didn't think," I interrupted. "You didn't think about the consequences, about the people you hurt. But now, you have to live with those choices." With that, I stood up, my heart still aching, but my spirit unbroken. "Goodbye, Gregory. I hope one day you understand the damage you've done." As I walked out of the cafe, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm, golden light on the world. It was a new day, a new beginning, and for the first time in a long time I felt a sense of peace. Gregory and Claire's voices faded behind me, their words inconsequential. I was moving on, leaving the past and its pain behind. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, ready to rebuild my life, one step at a time. In the days that followed the cafe confrontation, a sense of calm settled over me. It was as if facing Gregory and Claire, seeing their reactions to the truth, had lifted a heavy burden from my shoulders. My heartache didn't vanish, but it transformed, becoming a source of strength rather than a weakness. The legal proceedings for the divorce moved quickly, given the evidence of Gregory's infidelity. It was a straightforward case, and soon I was officially free from the man who had turned my life upside down. Along with the decree came a sense of vindication. Gregory was ordered to pay a significant sum in alimony. It wasn't about the money for me, it was about him facing the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, Claire faced her own repercussions. Word of the affair and the evidence I had gathered spread through the company. Claire's parents, deeply embarrassed by their daughter's involvement in such a scandal, reprimanded her severely. Her colleagues, who once respected her, now looked at her with disdain. She offered her resignation, unable to bear the weight of judgmental stares and whispers. As for Gregory, his downfall was swift and severe. My father, upon learning the full extent of his betrayal, was furious. He had welcomed Gregory into our family, into his company, only to be repaid with deceit. There was talk of firing him, but before any official action could be taken, Gregory resigned. The shame and guilt were too much for him to bear. I watched these events unfold from a distance, feeling a mix of pity and relief. Pity for the pathetic end to Gregory's schemes, and relief that I was no longer part of his twisted world. My family was my rock during this time. They welcomed me back with open arms, offering comfort and support as I healed. My job at the company provided a much-needed distraction, and my colleagues' kindness reminded me that I wasn't alone in this journey. Life was slowly getting back on track. I found joy in small things: coffee with friends, quiet evenings with my family, the sense of accomplishment after a productive day at work. The pain of the past was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, my father joined me. He put an arm around my shoulders, a silent show of support. "You've handled everything with such grace, Anna," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." I leaned into his embrace, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you and Mom. You're stronger than you think, Anna. And remember, this experience doesn't define you. It's just a part of your story." He was right. This experience, as painful as it was, had taught me a lot about myself, about resilience and forgiveness. It was a part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. As the sky turned a deep shade of orange, I made a silent vow to myself. I would move forward, embrace life, and open my heart to new possibilities. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. The days turned into weeks, and slowly the scars of my past began to heal. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt and pangs of loneliness, but with each passing day, I grew stronger, more resilient. My life had taken an unexpected turn, and in the process, I had discovered a strength I never knew I had. The experience with Gregory, as painful as it was, taught me invaluable lessons about trust, love, and self-worth. I learned that love should never be taken for granted, nor should it be a one-sided sacrifice. I understood the importance of mutual respect and the courage it takes to walk away from a situation that no longer serves you. Most importantly, I realized that my happiness and well-being were in my own hands. As I moved forward, I found comfort in my work, joy in the company of friends and family, and peace in my own solitude. The world, once gray and bleak, was now full of color and possibilities. Occasionally, I would hear news about Gregory. He had moved to another city, a shadow of the man he once was. There was a part of me that felt sorry for him, but I knew that our paths were never meant to cross again. Claire, too, had moved on, finding a new job in a different company. I hoped that she, too, would learn from this experience and find a better path in life. One evening, while sipping tea in my favorite cafe, a thought struck me. This was where Gregory and I had our first date. where our story began. It felt like a lifetime ago, a chapter from a different book. Yet here I was, not broken or bitter, but wiser and more whole than I had ever been. As I looked out the window, watching people go about their lives, I realized that life was full of second chances. It was never too late to start anew, to write a new story. And maybe, just maybe, love would find me again. But this time, I would be ready. I would enter it with open eyes, a strong heart, and the wisdom gained from my past. The cafe door chimed, and a burst of laughter filled the room. Life was moving on, and so was I. With a smile, I turned my gaze back to the bustling street, my heart filled with hope for what the future might hold.